Starting at about 12, 13, 14, somewhere in or around there, my stepmother had this hunch that I might have been bipolar, and she wanted me to see a psychiatrist. And my father, I guess at the time, didn't want to hear it and adamantly refused that I see anybody. And what was kind of interesting was that in the same year, I kind of blew up. I just erupted. Like, everything in my life changed. I started stealing from stores. I started drinking. I started using drugs. Eventually ending up in crack cocaine, ecstasy, heroin, stuff like that. I did that to manage my emotions. I think that, ultimately, the only relief I could get from the emotions that I was feeling inside of myself, a sense of distance from the world, or a sense of longing to belong, or for love, or any of that, I didn't feel that I had. I used drugs and alcohol, and it got really bad. I've been to about 10 to 12 institutions, boys' homes, rehabs, inpatients, outpatients, holding cells, things like that. I've had a ton of legal trouble in my history, um, and that went on until I was 27. So starting at about between 12 and 14 till about 27, I was on an utter and complete rampage, not only with drugs and alcohol and stealing, but with womanizing, sleeping unprotected with numerous women, uncountable amounts. And when I was high, I always knew, at some point I reached a point where I knew everything was going to catch up to me. But I wasn't quite ready to stop. And finally, when I ended up broke and pretty much homeless, I called my father and I asked for a place to stay. And my father said, I'm going to have to find a shelter, but he would come and get my stuff. At that time, I was living in New York City, and it broke my heart to the point where I knew that I could no longer live my life like that anymore. I could no longer just take, and give nothing in return. And what's funny about that, and how this deals with or relates to bipolar, is that once I got sober was when the mood changes started to occur. It was kind of like I took that whole 15-year period and used it to medicate my bipolar. And then, when I gave up the drugs and alcohol is when the anxiety attacks started. It's when I couldn't sleep anymore. It's when I started feeling uncomfortable around people, not knowing why, and the moods were going up and down. And I started to see a psychiatrist. At that point, I was diagnosed bipolar NOS, which means otherwise unspecified, meaning that my symptoms most likely seem to be bipolar, but I don't fit into the category of bipolar 1, 2, or 3. Um, so through all that medication of myself, I was able to postpone the actual dealing with it, excuse me. And now I'm in a place where I have about 6 years sober, and I am dealing with the things that have happened to me, and I am moving forward in my life. And I'll tell you, it is not easy. It's not easy to be bipolar. It's not easy to have mood swings. It's not easy to have post-traumatic stress disorder from when I was a kid, from the child abuse and sexual abuse I encountered from my biological mother. Um, when you're sober, that's when you deal with things. And now I am seeing the right doctor, I believe. I do go to therapy once a week. I do practice meditation about 4 days a week. I exercise pretty often, pretty regularly, and my moods are getting better. As I've stated in previous self-interviews, I take Klonopin, which is a benzodiazepine, which helps with the anxiety. I take Geodon, which kind of levels out the mood. It brings the highs down, it brings the lows up. It doesn't work for me every day, and I can be a real pain in the ass to deal with, especially for my girlfriend or anyone who's really, really close to me. But I will tell you this: there is hope, regardless of where you are in your stage of recovery or in your stage of your illness. There is hope that things can get better and can get manageable and can get treated. I'm living proof of that. I should be dead. I have totaled cars. I have run away from home. I have lived on cocaine for 4 months and nothing else, no food. I have weighed less than 100 pounds. Um, I have been violent. I've been ill. I have been out of control, and now, after this many years, about 5.5 years of continuous sobriety, I am starting to learn how to deal with the world. I also am employed full time, and over the past 5 years, I've worked 4 out of the 5 years. There was the 1 year period where I was hospitalized for a manic episode, at which point I was incapable of working for about a year. But I will tell you this now, you gotta fight the fight. You gotta go after your dreams. You gotta go after the good moods. You can't give up. You can't give in to this illness. This illness will destroy you and everything about you, whether it's bipolar, drug addiction, PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, any of these things. These things will control you and own your life unless you fight them, and you fight them well.